God's will, not God's will. Have you ever been in a place in your life, a situation, some circumstances, something you were doing, something you were planning or hoping for, that you said, this is God's will. This is God's will for my life. I'm doing it. And then something creeps in and says, I don't know that this is God's will. God's got something better, or he's got something different, or this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing, or where I'm supposed to be. Many different scenarios. Well, as I was looking for land, before I started looking for land, for years now, Lord, your will be done every single day. And please show me, bring me to the piece of land where you want me to be, where you want me to land. And if it's not where I'm supposed to be, that you would show me, tell me, because I can't always hear you, Lord. I went from absolute certainty when I found my land that I showed you. Here comes the sun. I love when that happens. From certainty to something that come up that I was like really, really uncertain, and it was like the day before my last of my due diligence feasibility period. I said a month. I think it was only 21 days. I got to it right away. I hope you enjoyed that last video, where I shared with you the 3 major things that you look for during the feasibility period for, if you're going to move forward with your land, and that it's definitely what you want and you're not going to walk away. But anyways, then I went uncertainty the day before my due diligence period was up to back to certainty. Thank you, Jesus. So today I'm going to share with you my little story from my heart. I barely have notes, just a couple bullets. It's going to be from my heart. I really haven't journaled it yet into a story. Just going to go by memory of what transpired and how I knew for certain that I was in God's will and he had handpicked a piece of land for me. Hope you'll join me. Hey, Serene and Simple Life peeps. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of those of you who are new, who are coming along on this nomad journey, as well as a landing zone journey. Buying land and getting a new tiny home. So excited. Hey, and I'm not at a rest area. I know some of you think that's all I do, but remember, I did a lot of camping in my 3.5 years as a nomad. You'll have to go back to the playlists. I was up in Washington as a camp host, and I was at Sandy's, and I was researching some things in Tennessee, and I was parked for a couple weeks with my clam up and all kinds of things. So yeah, I'm back in the woods and I love it here, but I'm not sharing with you just yet what's going on here because we're on a little journey here. And I know I just did a video of a new favorite rest area. Wow, was that cool or what? And doing some little shorts in between too of my journey after I closed on my land, and some big things coming up, like the decision I made of what type of tiny home to get. And I'm going to do a video coming up here. I think my next video, they're on Fridays and Sundays now, 2 p.m. Eastern time. I'm finally keeping them consistent for a while, Fridays and Sundays. But the next one coming up, I believe, is going to be on the pros and cons of a different types of homes I was looking at. You're not going to want to miss that. But today's video table topic is God's validation. His validation that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he put his signature on this piece of land. My name was on it, and I moved forward trusting God and in faith believing. You know, sometimes even if you're not in God's will for your life and you missed a beat somewhere, he turns things around into beauty anyways when you trust him. And sometimes it's just learning lessons. I tell people I went to the school of hard knocks. That's where I graduated from. I do have an associate's in business, but nothing like the school of hard knocks to learn lessons. You know, when you repeat mistakes, you have to learn more too, right? Anyways, let me take you back when I first found this piece of land, and I was like, wow, I think this is it. And I did not go back to it a second time. I called the realtor and we made an offer the same day. I didn't want to mess around. I wanted to work with a sense of urgency. It had been on the market, I think, for 3 months. So a little bit long of a time, but not like 6 months on the market. Made the offer, but when I first got there, I walked around the land and I was like, I don't know. I kept saying, I don't know, Lord. I wasn't feeling desperate. I wasn't feeling like, is this what I have to do? And you've got to go back and you've got to watch my land search, because this was the second time in this city and I was looking at 3 different parcels after a long search, like over 50 pieces of land. And I share in my land search all the different apps that I used and realtors that I used and the states that I went to 2 different states and all kinds of stuff. So it's a really good video. I'll try to put it in the description, but if not, look for it. And you can always go to the playlists to find things about my land search. Anyways, I'm walking around. It's really quiet. No noise around anywhere. Maybe just a couple birds. A home across the street. A couple neighbors up the way. And I was like, I wish somebody was out so I could just say hi and, you know, say, hey, looking at this land, what do you think, you know? Do a little fishing for information. And no sooner had I said, I wish there was somebody around, that the neighbor next door came out of her house. Now there had been a young guy on her land, and I was like, or in her yard, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, I don't know. I don't really think I should be asking him, this young guy. It's not going to be relatable. And lo and behold, Janet came out. And I was like, I called from a distance. Hey, I'm looking at this land. Can I talk to you for a minute or two? She's like, yeah, sure. She came over. Instead of just staying like in her porch area, she walked towards me. She came out around her property that's fenced in. And I introduced myself. And I'm telling you, it wasn't but 1 minute later with our, I kind of want to call it an instant bond, but I kind of want to be on guard here. You know, I don't want to be like, oh yeah, my new best friend. But the conversation flowed really quickly. She was really nice, really comfortable to talk to. And she looked at me and she said, after I told her, you know, that I had been in Texas and traveling and looking for land and whatever the case may be. She said, "Do you have a home church?" Now, usually that's not an odd question, but usually like that'll come like 20, 30 minutes into a conversation. In my mind, I'm just saying, that's not like right off the bat, boom, I'm looking for land. I'm rolling in here from wherever. I told her that I guess I had come from Georgia. I'm not sure exactly what I shared with her. And she says, "Do you have a home church?" And I'm like, "No, but that's one of the things that's on my considerations." And I just got full of tears, full of happy tears. Look at this, guys. I showed you this in a previous video where I did my land considerations. Not the things that I did in my due diligence, but in the considerations. And number one on this list, can you see that? It says church. I was like, okay, all right. Thank you, Lord. I don't have to walk around this land like stepping around, just wondering, okay, is this it? Is this where I want to be? Even though the quiet was there, the flat land was there, I knew that there was a septic. I just didn't know if it worked or not. Next door was a little pavilion area. I saw potential, as I shared with you when I was walking the land, for maybe an RV hookup at some point. And it was quiet, but yet there's neighbors in the distance. And all of a sudden, God is introducing me to my neighbor. Like, how often does that happen? I don't recall in my 50 pieces of land if I talked to anybody. I know I did in Tennessee. I know a couple times I met neighbors. But I don't recall this time around. And neighbors in the distance, but not on top of you. So I said, this is it. This is it. I'm going to make an offer. And I asked her, what she thought, what they were asking, and nothing like talking to a neighbor, what she thought I should offer. And she gave me a little bit of a background of the history that I shared with you, previous owner, and I did share with you in a recent video. So I called the realtor. I called Rick. There was no cell service there. I went around the corner. I know I'm going to be able to get a booster, and I'm going to get Wi-Fi there. I made that call also in my searching and due diligence and everything. And so I wasn't concerned that I didn't really have the cell service. I didn't have the cell service in Georgia either. I was always on the Wi-Fi in order to to get the good boost, or to use my cell service. Anyways, so that was it. I'm good. Now it's time to get busy and do my due diligence. Now, 2 weeks passed. I didn't go back to the land. I think maybe I went one time for a quick few minutes. Maybe when I was heading to the beach or something. I just did another walk around. I'm pretty sure I did. And everything was good. Yeah, when I did the video, I did the walk around. And then the day before, the last day before I would not be able to walk away after that, I said, Linda, you need to go back to the land. You need to go back to the land and just really pray, stand on the land, make sure. Because now I knew that I had all the utilities. Well, the jury's still out on the electric, how far I'm going to have to run it, but it doesn't look like it's going to be very far. I'm prepared for that. And I went back, and lo and behold, there was a non-stop, loud barking dog. Now, before you make any comments, which I probably won't allow to go through anyways, I like dogs. I'm comfortable around dogs. I'm not like you couldn't call me really a dog lover though, because I've never owned a dog. I didn't want to take on that responsibility as a single mom for 20 some years. My children always had dogs with their dad, and they have dogs now, and I love their dogs. But I'm not good with a non-stop barking dog, especially when it's not like a suburbia, you know. It's not an area where there's lots of houses and you'll hear a barking dog inside or something. This is rural. This is a little bit out in the country. And if I'm going to be sitting at my picnic table and I'm going to do videos and I'm going to be sitting on my porch, I don't want a non-stop barking dog. I don't like yappy barking dogs, and I don't like constant barking dogs. And this was constant. I was like, Linda, are you just being too overly? And I'm telling you that I was on the property for over an hour and the dog never stopped. I'm just saying. And I was like, okay. Part of me was like, the devil is really on my tail now. He is trying to do his very best diligence that I am going to walk away from this land. It's like, no. Once again, I wish my neighbor was out. I can text her, I can call her, but I did not want to bother her. And she came outside. This time I told her, is it okay if I come over to you? Because I knew she was having a knee problem. And she's like, sure. So I walked over to her porch and I said, Janet, I don't know what to do. And I knew the devil was trying to discourage me. He was trying to really get me to walk away. But at the same juncture, I was like, is this a sign that God doesn't want me to be here? That's where the uncertainty came in. You know what? And God is not the author of confusion. The devil is. He's the author of chaos and confusion. And I can feel this like it was just yesterday. I said, Janet, there's been a barking dog here for over an hour, nonstop. And she's like, oh, that's so-and-so. And I was like, wow, does that mean? Yeah, like no problem, it's a barking dog. She has a dog of her own. She has a friend who has a dog there. She's like, oh no, she's like, that dog doesn't bark all the time. And I was like, yeah, I was here before. I've never heard it. She's like, no. She said, it must be that it saw something and it's barking at something. And she told me about how the guy works all day and the dogs are older. She can't believe they're still here. And I was like, okay, great. Maybe they'll die before I move in. I wasn't, but it was her comment, and I was like, I just don't know. And I said, I'm just anxious. I want to know that I'm doing the right thing. You know, I don't want it to be too quiet, but she's like, no, I couldn't live with a nonstop barking dog either. And that made me feel so good. Like it wasn't just Linda and her dog issue, but she's like, no. She said, I will go over there and I will tell him. And I'm like, well, what's he gonna do? She's like, I don't know. But she said, I know him, and that's not acceptable. And I was like, wow, she's got my back. So things started turning a corner. And then her ex-husband that she's friends with came up, and he's like, they don't make them like that anymore. That's a beautiful piece of land. He had like an accent, a southern accent. They just don't make them like that anymore. And I was like, wow. Wow. So she invited me to church that night, and I was like, no, Janet, I just need to go and be quiet, and I just need to think about this. And I loved what she had to say. You know, it was turning the corner for me. It was helping me to understand, okay, this isn't going to be a deal breaker because it doesn't bark all the time. I had not heard it before, and her ex-husband, I don't like saying ex-husband, her former husband had come in and said, you know, they just don't make them like that anymore. And I was like, yeah, you know, it's like I've got a little piece of slice of heaven here, you know, and it's shaped in the piece of a pie. It's a slice of heaven here on earth. So I left. I called Rick. I said, Rick, did you ever hear a barking dog? Because he was over at the property 2 different times. And he's like, no. And I was like, well, I had the nonstop barking dog for over an hour today. I said, but thankfully it was a God wink. Janet came out and I was able to talk to her. He's like, okay. So the next day I went back to the property because that's the final day now. And I was like, okay, I gotta in a different time of day, I've got to go back over there in the morning and see if I'm going to hear that barking dog again. And I went back over there and I'm walking the land and there's no barking dog and everything's good. And I'm like, you just need to give it a little while. Maybe it's going to start up again. And this is going to create chaos, but I'm not sure. But I've got in the back of my mind, it doesn't bark all the time. And I got a little slice of heaven and they don't make them like that anymore. And so I'm like just walking around and lo and behold, somebody pulls up. And I had that in the video where I was walking the land. Okay, so go back. I think it's 2 weeks ago now. It was on a Friday. I'm doing them on Fridays and Sundays now at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And I was like, oh, someone's pulling up. I'll resume this video in a minute. The person that pulled up was the manager of a mobile home dealership where I am considering getting a mobile home. You got to stay tuned. 2 more videos coming up. Pros and cons of mobile homes versus tiny homes, and also rebuilding like I had before. And then I'm going to do a video when I decide on what kind of but anyways, he was the manager, and I introduced myself and I said, yeah, I'm considering, you know, your company. And he's like, really? And he's like, well, are you the realtor? And I was like, well, but before that, he's like, are you the realtor? And I told him who I was. And he's like, oh. And I'm like, why? And I said, I've got an offer on this, and just doing the due diligence, and you know, we're supposed to be closing in a couple weeks. He's like, oh, really? I said, yeah. And he said, and I said, what are you here, you know, about? And he's like, well, he says, we buy pieces of land. And I was looking at this land, and I was going to talk to the realtor and see if they might come down. You know what? I don't know about you, but that was my second and final and permanent stamped approval from the Lord. Because now somebody else's eyes are on this. Somebody else would love to snatch this up. And God, in His perfect timing, provided me this opportunity. Because they don't make them like this anymore. He's like, well, I've got another piece of property around the corner. He said, it's an acre and it is beautiful. And I'm like, oh, where is it? And he started telling me, and he says, would you like to follow me over there? Like, sure, yeah. If it's better than this, or if it's the same, I don't know. What's the price? And I had already knew that behind me they had already bought a couple pieces of property. I says, like, you own the couple behind me down the way. And he's like, yeah. And they're going to be putting new mobile homes there. So I drove over there, and lo and behold, it is a very flat, huge piece of land with no trees on a corner. And I was like, right away, just like when I was on the land search, I didn't have to second guess. I didn't have to hang out and think a while. I was like, no, I don't want an acre of land. I don't want it to be on a corner like this, all open, like an open field. I was like, no. I was like, oh, it's really nice, really nice. And I didn't say, no, I'm not interested. I don't know what I said. He's like, okay. So there you have it. I called Rick. I said, Rick, I got my validation. I got my God wink. I told him the story of this guy coming by, and he's like, yeah, he probably was just, I said, why didn't he snatch it up before? He was waiting. Because remember, I told you this was on the market for 3 months. He was waiting, and you know, the owners start to be like, I know myself, I came down in my tiny home price too when I was selling, because at first you think you're going to get this, and then you end up getting this. We made the offer. He didn't make an offer. And it was probably a timing thing for him, but yet it was God. It was God all along. God was in the details. You see where I'm going with this? That's huge, huge, guys. Put in the comments, have you had those God's perfect timing, that validation that you needed beyond validation, but the devil was trying to steal your joy and steal you being in his will, in God's will? So here we are, somebody else with eyes on it that was just like, yeah, this is a really good piece of land. And I got a fair price for it. I was happy, and I just told him, and he's like, yep. And my realtor says, yep. And then Linda comes along. So that was it, guys. That's the whole in a nutshell. The certainty, the uncertainty, and back to the certainty and being in God's will and not knowing. And there was no barking dog the entire time I was there. So here's hoping that those dogs have either gone to doggy heaven, or they're just another dog that was in the way and they were barking to get, something going on unusual. Anyways, I feel really good about the decision and knowing that I'm in God's will, because you can't go wrong when you're there and you're living His will for your life, as I did as a nomad for 3.5 years when I took off in my Acura, and then my SUV that's behind me, for those of you who are new. Then I got the landing zone, which was a great stepping stone to sell my tiny home and be able to purchase land, and now to build or get a mobile home. You'll have to stay tuned as we continue this journey on down the road. I'm excited, and I wish nothing for you but, can you hear the dog in the background? It's a great effect for this video, right? It stopped. Blessings in your day and joy in your journey.